What's up, everybody? It is May 15th. My name is Maximilian, and welcome to the inaugural and first episode of The Fray, a podcast-type show where we're going to cover the multiple different aspects of the fighting game community, from the many different games to the social aspects, tournament results, things like that. But joining me are a few and some of the more notable titans of the fighting game community. I'll just start off. Andrew Kane, also known as Magus1234. Say hi, Andrew.
Hey, what's up? I wouldn't call myself a titan, though, man.
Titan, an absolute titan, a god. We have Ryan Harvey, also known as Fubarduck.
Oh my gosh, hello.
Hi. And we have Aris, also known as Aris.
Hey, what's up, man?
So thank you guys very much for coming to the first show. I'm going to be the host of the show, and as we all hope for the next few episodes that'll be happening with The Fray, we'll have you guys joining us for more laughter, fun, and covering the topics of the FGC. So before we get things going, Andrew, or Magus1234, give me a quick, brief rundown of your history with the fighting game community and what's going on right now.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I've been playing fighting games since I was really young. I think competitively, I didn't really start thinking about it till like the late 90s, early 2000s. In the SVGL, SHGL era, I basically played CVS2, Guilty Gear, Marvel 2, Third Strike, all those games, all the way till 2009, where Street Fighter 4 came out. Took that game seriously, and since then have just really been focusing on commentating and getting the community together in NorCal. I think right now I'm just kind of taking it easy on competitive gaming and looking maybe for a game that interests me. So, and that's about it.
Cool. Fubarduck, what's going on with you?
Well, like most people, I started playing way back in the day. Street Fighter 2 era is when I started playing fighting games a lot when I was a young kid. And I started playing competitively when I started college. That was in the year 2000. What happened then, the significant thing was I moved here to Austin, Texas for school. And I was actually raised in small towns. I was raised in rural northeast Texas. So Austin was my first exposure as a young adult to the city. And I was reintroduced to the world of arcades. I had easy access to arcades everywhere. And I began frequenting Einstein's Arcade in Austin, which was the competitive hub for fighting games. The first games I picked up competitively were Capcom vs. SNK 1 and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. I sort of skipped over Marvel 2 and never really got into it. But I played pretty much everything else leading up to now. I played through the Guilty Gear series, made a name for myself there. Of course, many people know me as a Third Strike player. I got better at that game later on. And since then, things took sort of a turn around 2008. What happened that year is the previous arcade here in Austin, Einstein's Arcade, closed down, and for better or worse, I drank a whole bunch of 40s and decided to open my own arcade.
Hell yeah.
And by the end of the year, I had done so. So now, about 3.5 years in running has been Arcade UFO, which is my humble abode / arcade home here in Austin. And I've been juggling both that along with work and competitive gaming. I actually worked another job with the arcade up until late 2010. And since then, I didn't have enough time to do anything. And during that time, I wasn't traveling to any tournaments really except for Evo. And so since last year, finally, I've been focusing on just the arcade. And I've been trying to, be a lot more involved in the scene like I was before. And of course, I've been traveling to a lot of tournaments and stuff. Yeah. Main games right now are Ultimate Marvel 3 and KOF 13.
Well, yeah, shout-outs to you, dude. It's pretty tough juggling, like, commitment and your love of the game all at the same time. One thing I wanted to mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you might not have mentioned is your connection to the Japanese scene of fighting games, and that's pretty heavy as well, right?
Yeah, sure enough. I was trying to make it brief, so I sort of glossed over everything. But yeah, I actually majored in Japanese here at UT in Austin. I studied abroad for a year in 2005, and that was when I was really introduced to the Japanese fighting game scene for the first time. So I lived there for a year, and I made a lot of connections with the Third Strike scene over there. I made friends with a lot of players that are now well known, like MOV and Tackle Maida, and a few other like top players of Third Strike in Japan. Nuki, of course, and KSK, and all those guys. And so since then, I've been living in Texas, of course, since 2006, but I usually make it a point to travel to Japan once a year, typically for SBO or around that season.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I've been studying Japanese for so long, I'm basically fluent. I'm not like top level, but I have level 2 on the Japanese language proficiency test, which is actually the second highest level.
So you can like translate, and can you actually read it as well?
Yeah, I can read.
Nice.
I can read just off the top of my head without checking or anything. I can read upwards of 1,200 or 1,300 kanji probably. With a computer and tools, of course, I can read anything. But yeah, I would say I'm at a level where I can pretty much communicate whatever I want to communicate, read what I want to read. So there's still definitely room for improvement, but I'm pretty happy with my level right now.
That's pretty cool. It's also nice having someone who's heavily influenced in the American scene and is doing things like running arcades, and has another big influence with the Japanese scene of the fighting games, because they have been very separate as of the past, and then nowadays it's kind of coming full force, where we're seeing a lot more Japanese players contending in international tournaments and stuff like that. So yeah, let's move on to Aris. And what's going on, Aris?
What's up, man? Yeah, I guess I've been competing for approximately 11 years, focusing mostly on 3D games. I had some moderate success with Tekken 6 recently. I went to Japan a couple times. I qualified for SBO. And most recently, I've become the most hated man on the internet. So,
such a bummer.
It's a good accomplishment.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, it's on my resume. But yeah, other than that, I'm just here to talk some trash.
Well, thank you guys very much for coming. As with a lot of the guys, and especially you, as we understand your backgrounds now, you guys have a pretty big influence as far as the history of the fighting game community, with a lot of different of the fighting game backgrounds. Because when it comes down to this stuff, and like we'll be discussing in later episodes of the Fray, I think we're going to get into the larger majority of the fighters out there, and not just like Capcom games, which kind of take the precedence over the majority of the FGC a lot of the time. As far as myself, I'm a content creator mostly for Capcom games. If you guys haven't checked out my stuff, I do a lot of parodies, informational videos, and the overall goal is to pretty much get people involved in the scene, to get people in, and to make fighting games not seem as abrasive as they might be to an outside audience. And I think that's something that everyone kind of wants, is just to make the scene bigger. But yeah, thank you guys very much for showing up. So let's get into this thing. I think the first big topic that we want to get into were the events that took place at Shadaloo Showdown. That was a few weeks ago. So out of the four of you guys, or the three of you guys, which ones have actually seen the majority of Shadaloo Showdown?
I think I did.
Did you, Andrew? Okay.
This is Andrew, yeah.
Fubar, Aris, did you guys really get to check out too much of it?
I was in Japan when it was airing.
Okay.
So I caught like we were at the hotel Sunday morning, and we caught like the tail end of Marvel. So I've seen like the top 4 or so of Marvel, and I haven't seen any of the Street Fighter matches.
Okay.
I caught a little bit of it. Sorry, I caught a little bit of it, but I was trying to focus on Tekken and Soul Calibur. But I didn't really catch that much of the rest.
Yeah, okay. I caught the rest, so that works out.
Yeah, what big happened, Magus? Was there anything really notable that happened during the majority of Shadaloo Showdown?
No, I mean it was pretty expected. Like the Japanese swept Street Fighter 4. You could look at the results. Eita took it with Akuma. There was a lot of great matches in top 8 right there. I think this is going to look eerily similar at Evo. So especially with the divided attention of American players in other games. And if we move on to the other games again, kind of what we expected. Marlon Pai ended up beating Filipino champ in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. That was kind of East Coast versus West Coast dialogue.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that was interesting, and those were some of the best, highest level Marvel matches we've seen. Justin Wong right below them, kind of wondering what he's been up to. KOF was a Chinese player, I believe.
Really?
Zhao Hai, who ended up...
This guy is pretty legendary, by the way, Zhao Hai.
Okay.
Has he been
so
around for a while?
He's been around for a long time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and he ended up defeating Tokido in a really close match. It wasn't too free or anything like that. So
Was
Tokido,
Taquito a notable KOF player before 13?
he's just a notable player. The guy
Okay,
plays
so
Everything. He plays
he's just a
everything.
natural and just jumped in and starts kicking ass.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, Tokido is known as the type of player who dissects games really quickly and just tries to find the best strategy as quickly as possible.
He has
So
a
if you-
euphemism for cheap.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, he finds the cheapest. He's renowned for finding the cheapest tactic, character, whatever you want to call it, and going with that. But maybe Aris wants to talk a little bit about Soul Calibur and Tekken Tag. I don't know if you have the results in front of you.
I do. I mean, I caught a little bit of it. I think the interesting thing to talk about Shadaloo, to me at least, is that when I'm watching like the 3D games, and I don't know any of these players, it's very difficult for me to stay interested in it. And the conclusion I came to is that I wish some of these players would kind of put their names out there more, because Australia is a pretty solid scene for especially Tekken, and I just don't know many of the players there. So I'm kind of wanting to know more about this scene that I don't know anything about.
Is that kind of like with the Tekken scene where it's a little like hush-hush a lot of the time, how we don't hear much about the Tekken scene?
Well, I mean, Tag 2 is brand new, so it's going to start popping off, and Australia is one of the only places that has it in the arcade.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's just weird to me tuning in for a stream for a major tournament where there is a large scene, and I cannot, relate to any of these people because I don't know many of them. So that's what I took away from it. I'm talking about the locals, the Australian locals.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a shame they don't put themselves out there because, I'm not the best judge of skill in Tekken Tag yet, but I mean, MMT looked really strong, who played the Kings and who played the Williams sisters. Kentaro, they look pretty good, and Ryan Hart was in there and lost. I know he doesn't have access to the game, but still something to say.
Right, yeah. An interesting side note on Australia is a lot of Korean students go to Australia to learn how to speak English. And from what I hear, a lot of the Australian scene kind of gets like inside training from Koreans.
Oh, wow.
So what do you think about their skills? Like, just, if you remember, like, were they solid? Like, on the scale, kind of like, from countries, spanning across countries, were they decent?
I would say that they definitely know how to play. And I would say that I wish I knew the players individually, so at least I could relate to something I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they know how to play for sure.
Would America whoop them?
Most certainly.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Since a lot of us didn't actually catch Shadaloo Showdown, do you think like the time difference was a pretty big factor of catching a lot of the action for this stream and tournament?
I absolutely think so. Yeah.
Yeah, for myself personally, I felt like I was always behind or just missing something. I had a busy weekend when that was happening, but I barely was able to catch like some part of Street Fighter 4 at like 8 o'clock at night or something like that. And I felt like if I wanted to kind of like invest time, I had to stay up hella late or get up hella early.
Yep.
And it's just the case when it comes to like an international tournament. So I don't know as much you can do about that. Or
Yeah, I don't think we can solve that problem.
But it's kind of it's the challenge of international tournaments and trying to get like a huge audience for stuff like that. Unless like, you have some ridiculously huge, like if Japan Evo took place, I'd imagine a lot of people would have tried to make it to that, but nonetheless. Let me see. Was there anything that happened at Shadaloo Showdown that seemed kind of out of place as far as like character selection? You know how like final round we had Kusoru come in with some crazy characters and stuff like that. Was there anything really weird that happened as far as like character selection at Shadaloo Showdown?
I don't know if you guys know this player, but Mu was there from Japan, and he's like the highest ranked Gen player in Japan, and as far as battle points in the arcade. And he ended up getting 5th place. He had a very good showing. I actually caught a couple of his matches as well, now that I think about it. And he's a very impressive player that there does not exist much video footage of.
Uh-huh.
And this was actually a good chance for people to see, just what he was capable of. Of course, we've seen, his name escapes me right now.
Is it the SoCal Gen player?
No, from Singapore. I know who it is. He's the cross-counter Asia guy.
Was Xian?
Yeah, Xian.
Yeah.
So, of course, Xian has been using Gen too. But, MU is a player we really haven't seen much of, so it was nice to see his Gen.
And what's Gen, like a C rank character in 2012?
That's about right.
I mean,
Isn't he?
yeah, it's hard to say, but most people would generally consider him on the lower end.
So yeah, it was once again we're getting somebody in top 8 that's using a character that nobody sees before and probably winning because of it. And that's
I
probably
wouldn't say that though, Max.
you don't think so?
No. It's just strange.
He's really solid with the character.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Japan probably sees enough of Amu, and there's actually some like Professary, I think, or something, some other good Gens like online that plays, and he's not winning because nobody knows the matchup. Like Gen plays a pretty solid basic footsie game.
Yeah.
I think Amu just knows the character really well. He knew the matchups really well, and his skills carried him that far. He just happens to play a weird character.
I specifically, I just love it because when you see stuff on that high level, you kind of are exposed to all these characters so often that it's really hard for them to, especially with a game like Street Fighter 4, to integrate something that's new with like Akuma all of a sudden and characters like that. And when you have somebody bust out Gen, it's like everything looks new. I mean, besides like some of the basic like toe into slap combos, you start seeing some pretty damn awesome stuff. But yeah. I want to talk about later in the tournament with Ultimate Marvel 3 and the results of that one. Marlon Pai took the tournament. Has Marlon won a big major in the past, like, year or two?
Yeah, he's won basically East Coast's two most important tournaments, which are the Curly Mustache Tournament Series. Yipes is, of course. And
that's an invitational, right?
It is an invitational, but I think it's held in just as high of regard as any major.
Well, you know what? I actually have to interject because I had a conversation about this recently, and I honestly cannot disagree more, especially for a game like Marvel. I mean, I myself am not a Marvel player, but I do know that game is very unpredictable, and to say that the Curly Mustache tournaments count as majors is kind of unfair because in Marvel, one of the most dangerous things about a major is the random guy that can beat you and knock you out. And if you eliminate all the random guys in a major, that tournament, though it's full of killers, at least it's predictable killers. Well, and I don't know. You can't take it away from
a major.
Right? No, it is. But then what are we gauging here? Are you gauging like how he does in tournament or skill? Like, what are you asking? Like,
all I mean is like
because Curly Mustache is 3 out of 5 as well. So we're taking away the randomness. As much as possible.
All I'm saying is that I think that shouldn't count on the resume as a major win just because you eliminated that factor of the random decent player, and it's not fair to count it as a major, though it's awesome and fantastic.
I actually see where you're coming from, Aris, and I also see where Magus is coming from as well. And I think this is actually a pretty burly topic that we can probably take maybe later in this episode or another one.
Sure.
But the thing I wanted to quickly say about Marlon in the results was the fact that he hasn't taken, quote unquote, or as we were just saying, a major, like a regular major, and he took this one, and that was pretty surprising because he comes up with technology, and he's one of the most ridiculously execution-heavy players there is. And innovative stuff.
He's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, I can watch Marlon's Doom forever.
He's probably him and Champ are probably the two best players in the world.
You think so?
It's safe to say.
You don't think? Well, Justin got third place. What do you think about Justin?
I think Justin's fell. He's going to have to make some big victories in the near future for me to, in my personal opinion, to rank him up there. He's always going to be Justin, though.
Yeah. Justin always can just take a tournament, He's always that guy.
Yep.
As far as their character selection, Marlon was sticking with Sea Viper on point, Filipino Magneto. So, Justin was using Wolverine Storm Akuma, kind of going back to older teams. Didn't he win NCR using Iron Fist? Is that the right?
You won SCR using Iron
SCR.
Fist.
Yeah, he's not going to come to NorCal and win with that crap. Come on. Maybe SoCal he could win with that stuff, but not NorCal. Buddy,
it was one of the regionals that got mixed up. So it looks like we actually saw at the end of Marvel pretty teams that we have seen them use for quite a while. So this was kind of like a balls out tournament. No one's going to be holding any jokes, and it's no gimmicks. They were going all out. So it's pretty crazy that Marlon was able to take it, considering that. Let's see if anything else crazy.
Before you skip over that, how about right under Justin Wong, we have probably one of the most entertaining players, which is Zach Bennett from the UK.
Who is Zach using?
He plays Firebrand, Dormammu Amaterasu, and his Firebrand is like truly inspirational. Like if you ever listen to kind of like Crisis or some other guys' theory talk on how Firebrand's one of top 5 in the game, Zach Bennett really displays why that might be true. And it's really a case of if he touches your first character, he could kill him and then unblockable the next two coming in, and that's match. And I mean, he's proven it. Like,
yeah, that's I've seen a little bit of that stuff in theory and motion, and against some characters, it's unstoppable. I actually did not get to see his game, so I'm really curious to check that out right after this is over.
yeah, his Firebrand actually didn't even get to make it on the screen in top 8. I think people were just ruthless, and they just tore him apart. And he ran into Wolverines, which is tough. And he basically he didn't get any time to shine. I wish it would have been 3 out of 5, but I'm sure Zach's gonna chalk it up to experience.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. We got somebody else that we don't see too often using characters that we don't see too often as well, getting really high in tournament seasons that have a lot of probably the best competition out there. But with these top players and the guys that are making the tops of the majority of tournaments right now, and Evo on the way, did you guys recently see the trailer for Evo, the one that's going to be hosted through iPlayWinner?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Okay, yeah, and the Evo trailer is available right now. If you guys want to check out the Evo trailer, you can check it out on iPlayWinner's YouTube channel or follow them at iPlayWinner. You can also hashtag Fray to follow what we're doing on this show. If you want to contribute a little bit to what we're doing, we'll be able to check that out pretty soon. But before we get into the next topic of conversation, and we're going to go away from the tournament results and kind of get into what's going on with the crazy community issues that are related to the games right now, because there's quite a bit, since there's so many damn fighting games out there. Wouldn't you guys agree that there's a lot of fighters out there that are worth playing right now?
It's almost like it's oversaturated.
Or
almost
it's
like
cannibalizing
a company,
itself.
A company could use that as an excuse to justify a bad game.
I have no idea what you're talking about. So yeah, let's get into that.
That's ridiculous, Aris.
Yeah, of course. Preposterous.
Yeah. Let's we'll quickly cover up in that topic of conversation right after this break. Don't go anywhere. The Fray will be right back. Welcome back, folks. So, as we were just saying before we took our break, we're going to get into some other topics and follow up with Fubar, who has some expertise on the Kivo wrap-up and what happened with the overall impressions. So, Fubar, what happened with Kivo?
Okay, well, first of all, I actually like the pronunciation Kevo better. I always imagine it as Kivo in my head, and I think it's weird that you guys all say Kivo.
For some reason, that's what I've always heard it said as, and I'm like, yeah, it's Kivo.
Because it rhymes with weeboo.
Wow. All right. Well, Kevo, of course, as you know, myself and Hans were out there covering it. Myself, Hans, and Martin. They were totally great to work with, and it was a big hit as far as the stream goes and everything. Now, results-wise, and as far as the tournament went and stuff, I think Hans was kind of worried, because I think in the back of his mind, he thought that there was going to be basically like a bunch of scrubs playing, and then some decent matches once we got up to like the finals or the top 8 or something. But that was absolutely not the case. What actually happened was every single match of the tournament was extremely high level, like something you would see in top 8 of an American major or something like that. Yeah, right. So you could argue with that, but the fact of the matter is, we were there, we saw every single match, and we were really blown away by the skill level there. And I mean, a lot of people would revoke my citizenship for saying this, but I really feel like the overall level of the players, at least at this tournament, was generally higher than what you would see at an American Marvel tournament.
Yeah, it's much different. Like when you watch Marvel players, like Japanese Marvel players versus American players. What do you think, Andre?
I mean, I just think that's BS, because I think, like, when you watch Japanese players play amongst themselves, like, it's all rainbows and puppy dogs and, let's do this and let's all laugh and shake hands. But, like, when you play, like, Americans, like, it's not nice, and it's ugly and it looks shitty, but it works. And that's, like, tried and true tournament play style. Like, I just think, because, I mean, Ryan, didn't you say you think there was at least, like, 10 or 15 of those guys who could win Evo? Like, really?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
you really think they could come to Evo and get through the Yipes, the Jaywongs, the Filipino champs? Like, I don't know. I'm not buying
No,
it.
I'm not saying they would get through them. I'm saying those are the guys they would have to beat, like, in top 8 to win.
I think there's an important thing to remember between the difference of America and Japan when it comes to any fighting game, and that I think in America people are so serious and quote unquote hostile that people are almost scared to try new things, and they attach themselves to what is known to be good and don't deviate from it. However, in Japan, because everyone, is shaking each other's hands and looking at butterflies, and like you said, Andrew, and therefore we'll have some log trap shit that we've never seen before, so it's important to remember that.
You're forgetting one really important aspect to that, though, is we play for the cheese, and they don't play for money. So when we enter a tournament, I'm trying to take this dude's cake. I'm trying to win money. And these guys are just playing for whatever reason. Like, I don't even know why you'd get good in Japan, if you're not, like, taking somebody's money. But so these guys
they watch anime. They watch anime.
Yeah. That's why. But, like, that's why they have log traps and stuff like that. It's like over here, it's like, no, we're having, Weckers. And we're having Dr. Dooms and stuff like that. So I think money is like the biggest driving factor.
So
yeah,
you think,
I think
like go ahead, Aris.
No, I was just going to say, there are many parts to the equation, but I think that's one that you have to remember. People do attach themselves to what the top players think is top tier, and they don't deviate from it. I think it's important to remember that.
That's what you see with a lot of Japanese players. Like, they'll go with other random characters, like using Strider on point, and stuff like that you never see.
Yeah. By the way, while you guys are thinking about this, the winning team at Kevo has 2 Virgils and, 2 Weskers, 3 Virgils, and a Morrigan. Just saying.
I respect that.
Damn it.
I respect the lame. I mean, Japan's coming around, and it's no more this like beautiful Joe bullshit. Like, we're actually having some serious teams over there now. I think those guys, maybe watching that dude Kusuro come over here and whoop the Americans like they got a fire under their butt. So who knows?
Well, like, as far as character usage and team usage in Japan, I don't think it deviated too far from what we had here, except, I mean, basically, Kusoru coming over here as the representative for Japan, that would be like us sending like DJ Hyoshin to Japan, and he wins some tournament over there. Like,
DJ Hyoshin.
Like, I'm not hating on the dude at all. He's like, the reason I mention his name is because he's one of the more solid players in America, and he uses characters that are not common.
That are not frequent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Kusoru is the exception. That's not what everyone plays like over there, and that's not the kind of characters everyone's using over there. That's just because Kusoru's a freaking weirdo, right? and also a really original and innovative and solid player.
How did Kusoru do at Kevo?
His team got 2nd place.
Was he using he was using Log Trap and all the usual team, right?
He used the same team he used at final rounds. And let's see, who did he lose to? I believe he lost to. I want to say he lost to Kyame, because Kyame was pretty much kicking almost everyone's ass. He was one of the more solid players me and Hans saw and played against there. He uses a Nova Virtual Wesker, by the way. And Kyame also was the organizer of Kevo. Wow. Very nice and cool dude. And hopefully he runs another tournament like this in the future. But anyway...
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying, these Japanese dudes better be ready, because Kusuro came over here. He gimmicked his way to a grand finals, took some money home, and he got so spooked and so scared he doesn't want to come back, he was saying. So I hope, a whole bunch of Japanese guys all come to Evo, because I don't even think we're going to be seeing them out of pools, man. They're going to get blown up.
I want to see more variety. I think as when it comes to fighting games with a cast as diverse as a game like Marvel, variety is really important. And when you have variety in things like random, dude with Strider on point or Rocket Raccoon on point, something weird and insane that you would never do, I don't know. I think it makes it ridiculously interesting from a spectator standpoint. But speaking of what happened at Kevo, what do you guys think about this being a preview for what's going to happen at SBO this year? Fubar?
Well, first of all, SBO is still kind of up in the air because the format of the qualifiers still hasn't been announced.
Oh, has it not? Okay.
Right. So the only thing that's been confirmed is that it's going to be there. Nobody knows if it's going to be singles or teams. Nobody knows if it's going to be 2 out of 3 or whatever, or 3 out of 5 or one
They're
game.
They're going to do online qualifiers. I got it.
Yeah, no shit.
Yes.
I believe
Maybe.
it.
They might.
That's so sad. Don't say that.
No, I mean, that's seriously the best suggestion I've heard because, 95% of the play in Japan is online for this game.
That's true, I guess.
And I mean, the only time these guys are really playing offline is one, if they live in Tokyo, because there's a guy's house, there's a player's house that they play at every Saturday, who apparently somehow has enough room to have players over and setups and stuff like that.
They're small people; they can fit in them.
Well, it's a very unusual circumstance, is what I'm saying, because offline house gatherings are very, very rare in Japan.
Yeah, definitely.
So unless you live in Tokyo and are friends with Octi, because they all gather at Octi's house every Saturday, unless you're there, you're probably only playing Marvel online except at tournaments.
Do you think, well, actually, I'm pretty curious now, considering that we don't know, like, the qualifier situation, how difficult it's going to be to get some American player to SBO and things like that. Hopefully they make that announcement soon, because we've had, I think even with, the past 3 or 4 years, SBO, we always have, like, American representatives go over there, right? For, like, Street Fighter 4, Third Strike, stuff like that.
John Choi is usually the ambassador for that type of thing, and
okay.
I haven't heard anything about where the spots are going to be giving out this year. I don't know, maybe Aris or Fubar has heard differently, but I have no idea.
When it comes to is SBO like a paid? It's like pay to view, right? On streaming.
Well, yeah, like the way it works. Oh, the streaming? I have no idea. No,
okay,
I was just going to talk about it.
Recently, the way the streaming has worked is you have to pay on Nico Video like a set amount.
Mm-hmm.
Nico Video, of course, it's like sort of a YouTube thing for Japan, and you have to basically buy credits on Nico Video to watch it live.
And it's a pain in the ass to do that.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pain if you don't reach. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well,
which we all do, obviously.
Yeah. Only for morons, it's a pain in the ass. We all know
that's what I was trying to say. Sorry.
Right. Yeah.
There you go.
Well, hopefully that all goes pretty well. I'm really looking forward to SBO this year, especially with the return of Marvel, because you would probably know this, Fubar. How long has it been since there's been like a versus game at SBO? Like, how long has it been since like Marvel 2 was at SBO?
I don't think Marvel 2 ever was at SBO. The only time
it was
at a Japanese event was the USA versus Japan 5v5 in 2001.
Okay, I was thinking along the lines of like the Bang the Machine story and stuff.
Yeah.
That. Was that it? Okay,
that's what that was.
That's where I was getting mixed up. Okay, that makes more sense.
Where we bopped them. Yeah.
But SBO started in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And the first SBO had like Vampire Savior, Third Strike, CVS2, and
ST.
Guilty Gear XX and ST. Yeah.
Okay, so this is actually the first time.
And VF4.
Oh, okay. Oh, VF is usually there. This is the first time that we're actually going to see a versus tournament at like pretty much the biggest Japanese world tournament on the planet.
Right.
So
I actually heard through the grapevine. I probably shouldn't be talking about hearsay and stuff like that, but I heard like from a lot of people, there's kind of this feeling that this might be one of the last SBOs. Ryan, can you like reciprocate any of that or?
Yeah, actually, it's not just hearsay. They actually published that on the official SBO page.
Wow.
That was an official statement from the staff. They said that it's a great possibility that this may be the last SBO.
Yeah, is it just financial burden, stuff like that?
I'll preface that too by saying that they've said that before.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So this isn't they said that. But on the other hand, the thing that's unusual about this SBO is that, first of all, the information is coming unusually late for qualifiers and things like that. And secondly, this is going to be the first SBO in like 3 years where it's not going to be paired with Tokyo Game Show. Right, because for those who weren't aware, basically SBO used to be held in its own venue, which was actually really awesome. It was a boxing arena.
Oh, wow.
So what it was, the boxing arena was in the middle of, the venue, and the cabinets were all set up on that. And so when it got up to like the top 4 for each tournament, they would do like a WWF style like intro for each player, and there was like confetti and like lights. Like the production value was extremely high, and people would walk in and get awesome introductions and fight on a boxing stage, playing playing fighting games or whatever. So
smoke everywhere. Yeah, I remember the intros.
Like the production value always stayed pretty high, but what happened was in 2010 and 2011, it was paired with Tokyo Game Show in one of the separate halls of Tokyo Game Show.
Right.
So, I mean, like I understand that they probably were able to get that for much cheaper because they're both under the Interbrain umbrella. Of course, Arcadia is a part of Interbrain, and Interbrain is the company that puts on Tokyo Game Show. So, I imagine they were able to do it more cheaply that way, but we all looked at it like, I think collectively it was sort of viewed as a downgrade because
definitely, I agree.
It was definitely tainting like the pristine feeling of SBO, which was like a very exclusive event, and it turned it into. I mean, for lack of better analogies, it would be like if Evo was moved to like an anime convention or something.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree with that. And new venue is also a million miles from everything, which is also a big hassle to me, at least.
Right. It's to clarify. It's held like the previous location was in Ariake, which was pretty far away, but the new location is even farther away. It's at Makuhari Messe, which is a convention center in Chiba. So Chiba is like super far east from Tokyo. It's basically like it's closer to Narita Airport than it is to Tokyo, essentially.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Well,
So-
it's interesting because SBO is that huge tournament. I think when it comes to like gigantic international tournaments, like Evo is kind of the biggest one there is right now. Naturally because of the size and the scale. And as far as a personal level, like SBO is right behind it. But a few years back, like when it came to back in the old days of like Tekken 5, CVS 2, Third Strike, and games like that, it seemed like SBO was kind of the creme de la creme. Like back in the day.
People still feel that way, Max. People still
so?
feel like people still feel like SBO is held in kind of like a higher prestige than and Evo just is that massive tournament.
So do you think that, like, what's your guys' opinion on that? Do you think that just because of the size and the scale of Evo, that it is just like a spectacle? And if you compare it to something of SBO, is SBO like the upper echelon, like not as much seen but higher caliber type of tournament?
I personally don't think so. I think SBO is an extremely valuable tournament to have on your resume if you won, for example. But, I mean, Evolution is just so difficult to win. I mean, simply placing top 8 at Evo is, in my opinion, the equivalent of winning a major in the United States. So, that's how I've always felt. And SBO has always been really prestigious and kind of like mysterious, but it's not quite on Evo's level in my eyes, at least.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I felt that it was, like I was saying, kind of that back in the day, like it was the biggest thing that you can possibly look up to. But ever since the release of the Street Fighter 4 series and the upcoming of Street Fighter, it kind of feels like, in my opinion, that Evo is now like the world tournament, like the greatest gathering of the best fighting game players. But,
I agree. Yeah.
That's pretty safe to say now. Yeah.
Yeah, like just right now. So if with the possibility of SBO like being absent from like Japanese tournaments and things like that, like you were saying, Fubar, what do you think that does to like the Japanese tournament scene? Like, will there be like what would be the next big tournament in Japan if SBO was gone?
Well, it would really hurt a lot actually, because I mean the whole idea of SBO, like the original, inspiration for SBO was it was a way to support the arcade culture in Japan. And of course, this is going to be the very first SBO where there's been any console games at all. Previously, it's been exclusively arcade, and all the games are played on arcade cabinets. There's none of this like console or bringing your own joystick or anything like that. And that was always one of the things that I liked about SBO.
I agree.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing.
Yeah. But at the same time, with SBO, if SBO does leave the Japanese tournament scene, and if this is the last year for SBO, then it's going to be strange because there are going to be, arcade exclusive releases in Japan that there are basically no majors for until the game comes out on console. and then there can be like a God's Garden or whatever you have.
Right, like the Tekken tag situation where it's like the
Yeah.
game's
Oh,
out
wow,
for like
yeah.
a year and a half before we even get to play it.
Right,
Exactly.
and of course, at least because they have SBO, at least they're going to get a Tekken Tag 2 major.
Yeah. So how's that gonna work, Aris? Like, are we even gonna have Tekken representatives?
Well, as far as I know, because it's not available in America on arcades, I don't think they're going to give us a spot. I mean, that's what.
Such a
It,
shaft.
yeah, I mean, why? How could they? It's an arcade
Yeah.
tournament. How would you know?
Yeah.
It would be like lottery or something like that. I mean, how could someone run a tournament in America unless Namco backs it? But I mean, that's really unlikely. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a rough situation. Like we were saying with the production values, like that might be actually a reason why SBO might be doing well, because you can see it when you watch it. There's a lot of production values going behind the show, and when you have something like Evo, like the spectacle of the tournament is kind of the big production value in itself amongst all the other stuff. Like Evo is practically a convention, since last year, and I'm really anxious to see what they're doing this year. But speaking of production values and things like that, we were talking about it just a few minutes ago with Magus and Aris. You guys were having a little bit of a heated debate about whether you think invitationals are considered majors and things like that. So let's talk about that stuff. As far as invitationals go, what do you think are like the biggest reasons we should have invitationals and the biggest reasons we should like not consider them like majors? Go ahead, Aris.
In my opinion, I think invitationals are a really good thing, especially as a fan of fighting games. I love watching the two like major players kind of like it's like a boxing match or an MMA match, and I enjoy that. But there are problems with some of the formats. Like for example, if you have an invitational fighting game tournament and you throw in like this huge money pot that's like provided by some company, you are completely compromising the integrity of that tournament. Every one of those players, unless they're a complete moron, is going to split that money. And
Right.
there's no way to, get around that. So for that reason, I think that if you do have invitationals, they should not be for a lot of money, and they should focus more on the win and the pride, and perhaps maybe give them some kind of point that will go towards something in the future. But as soon as you throw money in the mix, I think it's a total catastrophe and it's a bad idea. That's
What do
my
you
personal opinion.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from about that, Magus.
I don't really care what they do for money. They can split the pot for all I care. Money's money. For me, all it is a driving factor to get better and show up to a tournament. And if that's what money does, is it gets people off their ass to come to a tournament, then it's already done its job. I can care less what they do with it afterwards. But the reason I love invitationals is because not only is it great depend how you structure them. I mean, we have two different ways. You have what Yipes is doing with Curly Mustache, where he's basically, inviting everybody he considers a serious Marvel player to show up to a prestigious, tournament where everybody plays 3 out of 5, so it's not like an 80-man bracket that they can't run.
Yeah.
It's just him, a whole bunch of good players. A lot of people respect Yipes, so they're going to show up to his tournaments, and it's for a lot of money. That's usually like $30, $40 to enter or something like that. And it's really exciting. Every time I've seen it, even if the people were splitting the pot, which they might have, you could have fooled me. But then there's kind of another way you can approach it, which is what, me, Hans, and Chris, and a couple of us got together and came up with the idea of NorCal Knockouts, which is more along the lines of, well, let's cut it down the middle. Let's get some players we feel that are like really good up and comers that kind of epitomize the young and hungry players that don't get the shine out there because they're not, popping off against some guy, or they're not controversial enough, and so whatever reason they're not getting attention. Let's give them the shine, and then if people don't, like that and they don't think that's legitimate, they could vote in who they think deserves to be in there. So we kind of right, and the concept extends past the players. I think as a production note, it gives people like Chris or Hans time to sit down and be like, look, we could make a show out of this. Like Tekken Busters or Tekken Crash. When you only have and I know Aris loves those shows and watches those. I do too. They're
Tekken
awesome.
Busters is crazy.
Right, it's a little weird. I prefer Tekken Crash, but
I got to get used to it.
There we go. I'll come around to it. But it's the concept of having this extra time and only 8 people. And and to work with the production. And me as a commentator, it's like a dream come true because I don't have to sit there and watch 32 bums hit each other in the face before we get to the good matches.
Yeah,
so.
it's an interesting thing because I've thought about the concept behind invitationals. You get the best players in one area to fight off each other, cut the pre of big tournaments right in half and go straight to the meat. The meat that is the finals, and that's what invitationals are kind of meant for. But at the same time, I think it's a lot different because people use the comparison of an invitational in fighting games to that of like real world boxing. People pay to see certain people square off against each other, and they do so for however much time, and then there's a winner. But with fighting games, I think it's a little bit different because these players, we see a lot of them. When it comes to a boxing match, they're you don't really see this person fight people for like 6 months and then they have an invitational or a big fight. When it comes to like fighting game pros and the people that are really good at these games, they're out there all the time, and they're out there at like the weeklies, they're out there at the majors. So you see a lot of these guys, and then you put them into one room together to fight each other. So you kind of miss out on like the exclusivity, which is why I don't like the analogy of it being compared to like boxing, how you compare it to a big event like. I think wrestling probably be a better example because wrestling it's very similar where you see the same people every single week and then they have a big event. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a thought process of how invitationals work and how it might be better to have more of them because it does remind me of like a monthly wrestling federation type of thing where you get your big pay-per-view show at the end of the month.
Well, I don't want invitationals to overshadow or take the place of tournaments. Obviously, I love tournaments. I think that's the natural environment for Street Fighter players and play fighting game players in general is the fact that hey, I don't care if you're the best player in the world, you got to get through Johnny Donuts before you want to get to the grand finals.
Right.
And that aspect is always going to be the heart of the community. Even Evo, that's thousands of players, is still doing a tournament, which is wild. Like a 2 out of 3 winners and losers bracket.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy that they're trying to do it, but they are, and it's amazing.
Which is why things like Evo points are so ridiculously, important for the people that are professional like players because they want to try to get away from that as much as possible because no matter how good you are at most fighting games, 1 out of every 10 games something really weird is going to happen.
Of course, but I think the benefits of what invitationals do. Of course, if you're not going overboard with them and creating like a player culture, which is like this weird cult of guys that only get shine time. I'm saying if you avoid the pitfalls of it and you're fair and the way you pick people is fair and it's obvious that it is, then I think the benefits greatly outweigh the kind of the pitfalls and the cons.
I think I want to clarify one thing about what I mentioned earlier. The reason I mentioned it is because I like it when it's the format of Curly Mustache, because each player has to pay their own entry and they're essentially playing for each other's money. What I don't like is when a major corporation does like an arena and pays these players to come to their arena and play each other for the corporation's money. Because when you have that, you, without a doubt, will always compromise the matches themselves because of the splitting. I mean, you can't avoid the pot splitting, and I don't care about it the way, just like Andre. But when it becomes a corporation's money, then I feel like the matches are compromised. While when it becomes my individual $40, then these people are cutting each other's throats, and that's what I like to see.
That's true, but we haven't really had that situation yet where it's been like a corporation, inviting like 16 people.
No, they recently did that. They had
actually that has happened, Andrew.
That exact thing has happened. Yeah, MLG ran an arena. I don't know all the details on it, but I did watch some of it, and it was for Soul Calibur at the very least. I don't know if they did it for the other games. And
it was it was Soul Calibur 5 and MK only.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, and it's exactly that thing.
Where NetherRealms put in some dough? Is that the one?
I'm not sure.
The dough is. Yeah, the money is provided by MLG, and I think their main sponsor is Sony for that.
Right. So when it comes to Sony, I mean, Andre, imagine you and I are walking into a tournament bracket, and of course we're going to be like, yo, we're going to take Sony's money. And that's what we're here for. Yeah, but if it was you and me paying $40 to enter in the tournament, I'd be like, yo, Andre, you could go fuck yourself. I'm going to take your money, you know?
I
So
respect that. Yeah.
It's always funny when I hear the perspective of players' opinions on this subject of like invitationals and things like that, and things not costing money, and it's just the spectacle of the players. I can always tell the perspective of some of you guys, and I actually agree with you that when something is on the line, it's much more important because we grew up playing fighting games in arcades where there was no console training mode, you know, to get good at these things. You had to put your money on the line to get
Right.
better and get accepted, and that's kind of shows through your perspective when it comes to things like invitationals. And I think you guys will agree that that's something that's changed drastically from fighting games of yore, is essentially the ability to have the game to yourself. You know,
Yeah, and
that's
now,
something
I
that's
mean,
new.
back in the day, getting good was where you were on the social rung and how people respected you. Now it's like you just put a YouTube video of making fun of some clown and get 1 million views, and then you're good. You're golden.
Yeah.
You're respected as top 8 now. It's like, what the hell is
Yeah.
going on? You know?
I don't know, man. Let's not even get into this. Before
Yeah,
I
that's
start
that's-
sprouting
that's a whole
gray
Well,
hairs.
Can I just say one thing? Even though it's a gray area, I just want to, because this doesn't involve us. This is Japan. So, in the latest Arcadia magazine, you guys understand how in every Arcadia magazine every month there's a Daigo column, right?
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh, well, there is. There has been for a long time. So every month in
Wow.
Arcadia there is a Daigo column. It's 2 pages. It's always very interesting to read. And so I was reading the new one on the way back from Japan on the airplane, and this time,
Wait, is it something he wrote, or it's an article following what he's doing?
No. It's the guy who writes the article every month. Fields questions from the fans for Daigo.
Oh,
and
gotcha.
and Daigo answers them.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
Sweet.
Go ahead.
And
Yeah, sorry.
this time Bonchan and Fudo joined Daigo in the column to answer questions.
Nice.
And there was a brief mention of streams and how like streaming has been picking up in Japan lately, and more individual players have been streaming. And you know, the person conducting the interview basically asked the players like, "So what do you guys think about that?" And Daigo was like, "Oh yeah, well you know that's fine. Like, I don't see it as a big deal." And Bonchan came in, and Bonchan is like, "Yo, I just want to say, anybody that streams and talk shit about other players, those guys are done."
Wow.
Like what? He's gonna have them killed? What do you mean they're done?
For lack of a better translation, you know, he said like these guys are freaking losers if they're talking shit about other players on their own streams.
Oh, Bonchan's a thug, man. I respect that.
Yeah, Bonchan's he's a gambler. He a lot of people don't know this, but the reason him and Daigo are such good friends is because they were mahjong partners while Daigo was in his mahjong phase before Street Fighter 4.
Right.
Was that like Picasso's blue phase?
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's
Well,
funny.
That's
That's
pretty
good
crazy.
stuff. Though.
I had no idea that even existed. Yeah, that's actually a pretty interesting story. I'm kind of curious if they would possibly have translations of that up on, you know, bigger sites like SRK and Event Hubs.
Well, can I say something? And maybe Ryan can agree or disagree with this. Japan is kind of going through now, or the early stages of what we went through years ago, which is like the arcade scene kind of like, you know, melting and just deteriorating while we're struggling with the concept of console players being even good. Like, I know for the longest time, I didn't even want to admit that some guy who just played at home could be good. Like, that was, you know, that was shameful to me. If I ever lost to somebody on a pad, like, I didn't want to approach my friends after I lost to somebody on a pad. That's how shameful it was.
It's definitely a hard pill to swallow for an old school fighting game player, that's for sure.
And imagine the prideful Japanese going through it. So it's probably, you know,
people
it's
are extremely proud.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Yeah, I mean, I definitely went through the same thing of like, you know, not accepting that a console only player could be good to realizing that actually it's quite the opposite. The more time they spend with the game, you know, the better a person is going to be for the most part. And yeah, I would say Japan is definitely going through that. And I'll just surface that with one anecdote. Well, first of all, while arcades have had a decline in Japan, I would say from first-hand experience that it's still very alive and well. The arcade culture is still there, and there are still arcades pretty much everywhere, especially in the cities. So I don't think they're going away tomorrow. I think there will at least be arcades for until we all quit playing fighting games.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the
so
spectacle of the arcade will remain.
A lot of people, I just hate it when a lot of people try to say like, well, arcades are dead in Japan too, and it's just some noob that doesn't know anything. Arcade culture is still very alive and well in Japan, but it has been a little bit declined. So and there are a lot more players playing on console and stuff. So of course, right after KEVO, the 3v3, there was KEVO Gods, which was like a 1v1 Ultimate Marvel tournament.
Yeah, that was dope.
And yeah, it was dope. And I don't know if you guys knew this or noticed this, but the guy who won, his name was Ray-chan, and he was a PS3 pad user. And quick story about Ray-chan. So Ray-chan was very highly ranked on PSN, but so people realized that he was good. But what happened was, every time there was talk on BBSs about an offline tournament, usually they would have these tournaments like, with joysticks already hooked up or, something along those lines. So essentially, to make the tournaments run smoothly, they would say no pads, just play on the joysticks provided.
Dang.
Actually, yeah, I've heard about this.
That sounds
in some
dope.
places doing
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
Because they don't want to. There's so many people and there's so little space, and they don't want to waste time with shit like button checks. They just want to get the tournament over with so everyone can go home. So they'll have two joysticks plugged into the consoles, and they'll say, play on this. And typically that's how Japanese console tournaments have gone. And so, this guy Ray-chan always said, well, I play on PS3 pads, so I'm not coming to the tournament unless I can use pad. And of course, there were people talking shit like, oh, well, probably suck anyway.
He must have been at home being like, you motherfuckers, give me one day where I can play my pad. Now
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because, KEVO was announced, and KEVO did the same thing. They were like, joysticks only, no pads. And then KEVO Gods came along, and KEVO Gods said it's going to be PS3, and we're going to allow pads.
Wow. Before we get this one to go on any further, guys, this is actually a pretty big conversation that I've been thinking about a lot myself too, and I think it might be good for maybe later in this episode or another one. Let's keep that one in mind, because the concept of pad players and the old Japanese arcade mentality and the old arcade mentality mending with the new mentality of fighting games, it's like old FGC versus new FGC. I think it's kind of something that we need to pick up a topic of later on.
Sure.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Do you want me to wrap this up real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, essentially, Ray-chan was like an abominable snowman. Nobody knew what he looked like or anything like that. And so when he showed up to KEVO Gods, people were literally like, is that Ray-chan? Like, people were trying to figure out who it was and stuff. And as luck would have it, I entered KEVO Gods, and he was my very first match in the tournament.
Of course.
And I had no idea who he was, and he played pad. So I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, this guy's Japanese and he plays pad. This is going to be free. And
and little did you know.
Little did I know. And he picked Deadpool. I was like, who the hell is this guy? So yeah, he beat me pretty convincingly on stream, nonetheless. And I did manage to squeeze out a game with a level 3 Dark Virtual comeback, but I mean that doesn't really count. He was much more skilled than I was. And
well, they count versus me though.
and yeah, he ended up winning the whole tournament, defeating Cho in finals, who was of course like the most established player. So
dude,
that's all.
I've been saying it for a long time. Deadpool's an underappreciated character, and there's other characters that do similar stuff. But yeah, dude, the dude's got some tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, he's awesome.
We're gonna take care of this conversation and follow up a little bit later. So for now, we're gonna take a quick break. But after this, we're gonna talk about the Street Fighter Cross Tekken sales, and like we were saying earlier, the oversaturation / cannibalism of fighting games that could have possibly affected the sales of Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Stick around, folks. We'll be back just after this. One more time. Welcome back to the Fray, everybody. I'm joined by Andrew Kane, Fubarduck, and Aris. We're going to be talking a little bit about the sales of Street Fighter Cross Tekken. The figures have recently been released, and the recent announcement of Capcom talking about the oversaturation / cannibalism of fighting games that were affecting it. So before we get into that, because it's kind of it's kind of a rough topic and an interesting thing that they would tell us. The sales figures for Street Fighter Cross Tekken, in my eyes, don't seem too bad. Like 1.4 million is pretty good. Did you guys see how much the game sold in comparison to the other fighting games?
Yeah,
yeah.
So yeah, as we can tell, like Street Fighter 4, the biggest thing to happen to fighting games in the past 10 years, sold about 3 million copies. Between that one and like Super Street Fighter 4, there was another 1.8. So there was around 5 million copies of Street Fighter 4 and its multiple iterations floating about. You compare that to a game like Marvel, and Marvel 3 but I think it moved about 2 million units, and then Ultimate Marvel 3 only had 600K. And speaking in these sales figures, does it surprise you guys that Ultimate only sold 600,000 copies?
Not at all, in my opinion.
It's not surprising, especially when you consider how quickly it came out after vanilla Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I mean, it would sort of be like, if you're just a player who enjoys like single player experiences, and you bought like Resident Evil 6, and then like 6 months later they released Resident Evil 6 Ultimate or something, or Perfect Edition.
Resident Evil 6.5.
I mean, most people would say, F that.
Well, the diehard fans, or the tournament players will be like, I'll play it. But then the Joe Schmoes who just play the game for fun and get bored of it real quick, they're not going to buy it. So it's
and I think that's a huge part of when it comes to like fighting games, are the people that just buy the games to occupy their fighting game library spot,
Yeah,
like when people have video games, they just want a game to go in there, and whether that's Tekken or Street Fighter or whatever, they're looking for something. And Street Fighter 4 really filled that gap back in the day. But now that this stuff has been around for a while, and Ultimate only came out 6 months after, whether or not that was Capcom or Marvel's fault or whatever, it doesn't really matter who was at stake. You can definitely see it in the sales, because 600,000 I think is a pretty good gauge of how much there is a fan base, for the Versus series, and how much there is of people that are just buying the game to buy the sequel to Marvel vs. Capcom 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now we have a game that comes out, is technically the sequel. I call it the Street Fighter 4.5, like we were just saying, to Street Fighter 4, and it's Street Fighter Cross Tekken. So 1.4 million in sales, I think, was undelivered of what their expectations were, which was around 2 million. So it actually isn't that bad. Like, I don't think that's bombing very hard, but I think for the sake of which the initial presumption of the game coming out was pretty good, but then things happened like Gems and Pandora and stuff like that. I mean, you guys can probably take it from, like, my opinion about the game when we first had it early, like during the Cross Assault and the first couple of weeks of Street Fighter Cross Tekken. The buzz was actually pretty good, all up until the DLC thing happened. Like, you guys agree, right?
Yeah,
for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, like it kind of was pretty convenient with the bad news, and then that kind of spread, and then there was nothing good, and then there was like the Xbox version doesn't support that co-op thing, things like that, and it was just downhill from there. Because I remember the first couple of weeks of Street Fighter Cross Tekken, everyone was like, "This is the greatest fighting game ever." I mean, they always say that about a new fighting game when it comes out.
A couple idiots were like that, but that was it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say everybody was like that. Actually, all of NorCal, when they first played the game, was like, "Yo, this game is garbage." But nobody said that on stream or anything,
I mean, actually, Jimmy Tran did say it on stream.
He did, yeah. I respect that. He's like, this is the most generic game I've ever played in my life. To Seth Killian and all those people in the room. Like, I respect that so much. I was like, wow, you're a man amongst men.
And it's the only way to do it.
It's weird because Street Fighter Cross Tekken has like more system mechanics than like any fighting game ever. Like it's weird to figure out like where the hell is this game going wrong. What do you guys think is the biggest issue with Street Fighter Cross Tekken? Let's start with you, Fubar.
Sure. Well, let's say you made a game and made all these deep system mechanics, but they were all pointless because the best thing was X. Yeah. And that's what Street Fighter Cross Tekken suffers from. There are a lot of interesting mechanics, like there's Pandora, there's the gem system, but the best things in the game are like the best use of meter is attack cancels, and the best use of gems is ultimate defense, and I think that's like indisputable. So
I don't know. People, I mean, meter usage. I mean, alpha counter. It's kind of important, especially with jab lockdown and stuff.
Level 3s,
sure.
Or level 3s as well. Yeah.
You can make arguments for that, but your biggest reward for the risk you're taking usually comes from tag cancels, and usually it comes from Dragon Punch tag cancel, or whatever invincible move your character has in attack cancel.
Yeah.
Because
that's true.
It's basically going to lead to like 35 to 50% damage, followed by Oki, which is possibly going to KO the character. So I feel like it's a game that could be deep, but it's overshadowed by these very simple and gimmicky things you can do to take a round really easily. So, for example, like I play Kin and Raven in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. And first of all, jumping hurricane kicks also have some of the most ridiculous like non-hurt boxes in this game. So
your team is so scummy. It's so scummy.
I can literally just jump around and hurricane kick, and if it hits you, I can hit confirm into Raven, and then I get Raven Oki, which is arguably one of the best in the game.
Yeah, man, that's
so
good.
And it was so funny because the last time we had a Cross Tekken tournament here in Austin, I was playing against a Geef player, Jan from Houston, who's like a very respectable grappler user, and I literally did nothing but Kin hurricane kicks against him, and he could not do anything about it because Geef Lariat loses to Kin hurricane kick.
Does it really? Are you
Yes.
serious?
It loses. It's
oh my
straight up,
god! I need to abuse that
is
more.
Beaten by jumping Kin hurricane kick. It's probably the best move in the game.
That's insane.
And so you've got things like that, and you've got things like of course standing jab from Raven, Ryu, and I think I remember Mike Ross saying the lesson he learned from Australia is that he's not jabbing enough. He's not playing lame enough. And currently, the formula to win in this game is to do something, it's to do the most obvious thing, which is very mundane, and, a lot of players don't like that.
What do you think, Aris? What do you think is the biggest thing wrong with Street Fighter Cross Tekken right now?
I think one of the biggest problems that they had, earlier someone mentioned that, do we think if they should listen to Event Hub's comments when it comes to developing a game? And I think the ironic thing is that perhaps they listened to Event Hub's comments or comments of that sort when they developed this game, because it feels like it just feels like a grenade went off and ideas just splattered against the wall.
Yeah. So are you telling me that Street Fighter Cross Tekken is a product of Stream Monsters?
It almost feels as though it is. I mean, it's like the trolliest game ever. Yep. And, you almost feel like you're just looking at a Kappa face when you're playing it. You're getting locked down by standing jabs. And, it's just like, you think to yourself, like, whoever developed this had way too many ideas and didn't focus on any of them. And then they have all these gems, and it's like, okay, maybe they're, catering to, like a Pokemon kind of a player who wants to collect all the gems. And it's like, it's very hard for me to pinpoint what exactly is wrong with it, but I know that it's really fundamental. Like, you'd have to go way back to the drawing board, in my opinion, to fix it.
Yeah, I do agree with you that they were trying to go for something else. I'll give my opinion after this. What do you think, Magus or Andre? What do you think about Street Fighter Cross Tekken?
Boy. So they want to complain that it's oversaturation of video games and fighting games is that what made Cross Tekken bomb. But if you ask me, it's the oversaturation of bullshit in this game that made it bomb. I mean, this game is ass, and it was straight ass when I got it, and it was ass when I put it in the trash can. Like, everything about it sucks. Like, the footsie is interesting, right? That's what I was like, okay, cool, this game actually could be kind of tight. Like,
actually footsie heavy, yeah.
Right, it's really footsie heavy. But then it just gets so annoying. Like, if you touch them with the standing medium with Chun-Li, it doesn't end there. Like, I didn't succeed. I didn't just succeed in punishing them. I have to go all the way into my switch cancel. I have to switch out Chun, even though I just want to play Chun. And I have to bring in my second character and do some lame combo. And it was like, okay, there goes 15 seconds on the clock for a standing medium whiff punish. Like, that's crazy. And then, then you run into the derpy stuff like, Ryan Harvey over there plays, and that just makes you never want to play the game again. Like, I played a small set with him. Like, it was funny because we have a friend who likes the game, right? God knows why. But we went to his house and we were staying there, and he's bitching the whole time. Can we play this game? Can we play? And we're like, fine, we'll play. So we put it in, and we probably play like one rotation, and my sodium levels were already through the roof. And I was like, I can't do it, man. Like, and everybody agrees. Like, you can't define what's wrong with it. When something's just fundamentally wrong with the game, you just sense it. You feel it. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, but I agree with that. And they hit it well, yeah.
They hit it very well.
Yeah.
Like, it's just bad. It's timing, it's walking, it's everything. But you know what? I have to thank the game because it did do one great thing, and it made me actually want to play Tekken. So I'm always going to thank Cross Tekken for actually getting me into Tekken. So that's my 2 cents on that POS.
Yeah, I think Street Fighter Cross Tekken is really interesting because I played the game from its early on development, and then I played it mid development, and then I played it at the end, and it changed so drastically. And I think that the base gameplay system mechanic, like, you know, the base idea of switch canceling and choosing between your meter of supers and stuff like that was pretty good. But then it got to the point, you know, the gems thing, the Pandora thing, these throwaway mechanics.
Max, the game was actually way better in the beta versions than it was when it came out now. They just added all this flash and rainbows and all kinds of crap, and it was like, what happened?
That it was a much more like this quote gets thrown around a lot nowadays. It was much more of a quote unquote honest fighting game, like back in the early iterations, and it felt like Street Fighter 4 too, like in my opinion. In the early versions, and I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, Street Fighter 4 kind of bugged me, and I just some reason over time, I don't have anything against the game. It just wasn't my game, but I loved it at first, and it felt like it was just a different, you know, approach. Like, there's wall bounces, there's like these air combo things, there's crazy juggling. This is cool. This is like a insane version of Street Fighter 4, but down the line of last year when August came around, there's the gems and all that stuff. So
and it just blew up. But hey, Max, I gotta ask Aris something. As a Tekken player, like, how did the Tekken community? Because I know I see like MYK and Rip and some other cats play it, but do they really play it? Like, do you guys secretly like just completely dog the shit out of this game? Like, I'm just wondering how the Tekken community took this game.
Well, I think as a Tekken player, there are only a few reasons to play it. One is if you want to play for money, because there's a lot of money involved with that game. The other reason is that you play everything and you're just trying it out. Yeah. And the third reason is that you're a moron. So that's my stance on it. I do play it every now and then because, you know, random kids come in the arcade and they want to play, but I most certainly will not be competing in it, and I think that it has nothing to do with Tekken whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing that's really closely associated with Tekken is a couple of system mechanics, and the characters in the game look like Tekken characters.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually excited for Cross Street Fighter because I think Namco has its hands in the game. Like, honestly, like, it's sad because, you know what? I've been a huge Capcom fanboy for a big part of my life, and it's sad that fighting games that Capcom are putting me out have actually made me go to Namco for solid, good fighting games. And I don't mean sad in that sense. It's just sad that you know, a Capcom fighting game player has to look to other games to feel like he's playing something good now, you know?
Yeah, I honestly feel more people would do that exact same thing if they just slightly had a more open mind and a little bit more patience.
I wish they would give the game a chance. It's great. It really is great, man. For all the shit I talked about it in the past, Tekken's a really good game.
There are many, many people in your shoes, I think.
So too, man.
As long as if it opens the gateway to fighting games in general, I think that's a good. Personally, I still find Street Fighter Cross Tekken somewhat fun to play Asian, but when it comes down to certain things in the game, like the clock is the obvious one that everyone's got an issue with, and it's very easy to get pissed off at it. And the other things that are really, really bugging me over the past like month or so has been the recent addition of the DLC gems, essentially the pay-to-win type of stuff. I think I was telling you about this earlier, Andri and Aris, was like I was running into people online, and every other match now is a guy using Ultimate Defense and a gem that boosts your life to the point at which you have Zangief or Hugo health. And it's like, dude, this is ridiculous. Like, what am I supposed to do against these people if they actually know how to play? Like, the point of the gems, I felt, was to get newer players a better chance against, you know, veteran players or people who actually know how to play fighting games. But at the same time, those players, no matter how much of a handicap you put on the other person, it doesn't matter. Like, you're going to lose to somebody if you keep jumping. You know, you're going to lose to somebody if you keep abusing the same tactic over and over again. So I don't know. It seems like
it fundamentally broke apart what Street Fighter is too. Is what you're saying? It's like, you know, you have some stupid habit, and my my goal as a player is to pick up on that habit, expose you, do 50% of your health, and make you say, "Oh my God, I'm never doing that again." And instead, now it's telling kids, like put your hand on the stove over and over again because that's the cool thing to do. And it's like the game will seriously, if that's your first game, you're screwed. You're done.
Yeah,
you're
I agree.
Oh yeah,
I agree.
You're done.
I think as far as like at least Street Fighter 4 has some pretty, derpy stuff about it and some things that'll make up people upset, but it has good fundamentals of Street Fighter.
Actually Street Fighter 4, the way it's so like you have to be so on point with things in Street Fighter 4 to the point that like if you're a frame away, somebody's mashing uppercut on you. Yeah. Like it actually forces you to be tight. Like this game does not.
Yeah, you get it's funny is that it includes things that I really liked from fighting games of the past. Like I was saying, like I love CVS 2. I was never ridiculously competitive at it, but I was decent at the game. And I liked things about CVS 2, like the amount of blocks done. Like you can actually jump in and attack and have proper block strings and stuff like that. And this game did that, but it did it in a way that it
OD'd.
It OD'd it. That's
like,
That's a perfect
Heihachi's
example.
jumping roundhouse. It's like an anvil in the cartoon that falls on top of you. It's like bonk, and then you're just done. You're done. Like
He's
you have
wearing
no
Acme sneakers and shit.
Yeah, man. Like what happened to him? Like I know he got old, but dang, like when he gained weight, like it's crazy. Like it's just crazy. Like right, Max, I agree. Like they tried to bring some of those aspects back, but they just did it in a weird way that seems like forced and just it's not natural Street Fighter.
I also get personally attached for fighting games, like to a reason that's not just like the gameplay system. Like Skullgirls is a game that I like a lot, but because it has like an all-female cast and it's only 8 characters, it kind of prevents me from playing the game more than I would like to compared to other games. And because Street Fighter Cross Tekken has like a cast of pretty diverse characters that I have looked forward to using, especially with like the DLC guys coming out, I'm going to keep playing it just because of that. Just because I like the characters. I like Ken being good again. Things like that. So nonetheless, everyone has their perspective, and the game definitely is at its faults. But
if you like the game, play it though. Don't take what I'm saying. Like what I'm saying is not gospel.
I think it's important to remember that the things that both Andrea and I are saying are directly in reference to competing in the game, not just playing it. I mean, that's really, really important to remember as the listener. Like our statements are really like coarse and abrasive, but that's only referring to competing, and that's really
of the
important.
Perspective you guys have.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Like you were saying, Aris, when it comes to a game like Street Fighter Cross Tekken and it's integrating 2 completely different types of fighting games, is there anybody, like you were saying with Rip and MYK, is there anybody else that is taking this game seriously from the Tekken community, like that you know of that's big? Is it just no?
I mean, at NCR, it was like the pivotal point where people were just starting to hate the game. And at that time, Mr. Naps, of course, was doing very well. But other than that, I mean, I can't think of anyone. And I assume he doesn't like the game anymore at this point. So, I don't think so.
I'm actually not too surprised because the last thing this game reminded me of was Tekken when I was playing it.
Yeah,
so,
very true.
The only thing that really reminds me of Tekken is the fact that it has Tekken characters that look like Tekken characters. Besides from that, there's been some pretty big news that happened recently that I think Capcom has realized kind of the error in some of the design aesthetics of the game. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you guys caught it recently. It's been on SRK and Event Hubs, but I think the recent producer, I don't know if Ono is the producer of the game anymore since he's working on other stuff.
It's Ayano now.
It's Ayano.
He was the producer for Super Street Fighter 4 console.
Gotcha.
So Ono got canned over this game. I mean, this game is a mess.
Who knows?
That's crazy.
It's with the new producer. He was actually saying that they want to address the issues. They think things like ultimate defense is not good. They think that things like timer is not good. They want to make the game more exciting. I could kind of commemorate Capcom for trying to fix things because I think that's kind of bold for a company to say, "Yo, we effed up, dog." Like that. Not many companies will end up doing that, and it's pretty rare when it happens. But do you think Street Fighter Cross Tekken is savable at this point? Like Fubar, let me ask you: do you think Street Fighter Cross Tekken has a chance at like redemption if they start changing things like crazy?
They would have to change a lot of things, but fundamentally, like if I were to pinpoint one thing and say this is the problem with the game, I would say it's the dial-up combos. And just the fact that they take so much time, and the fact that some characters have ones that like hit confirms that they can spam that are safe.
Yeah.
Like Vega and Sim, I believe.
Kazuya, man.
Kazuya too. Okay, yeah. So these guys all have like if you do a jab to a strong or a short to a forward chain on block, it should always be unsafe. It should always be punishable by like the biggest combo you can imagine.
Yeah,
Wasn't it that way in like Tatsunoko versus Capcom? If you went to the heavy version, you were unsafe.
I have no idea, as
Okay.
I didn't really play that game, but
Okay.
so I'll say that, and I just want. There's just one other thing I want to say. You know, the most insulting thing in, in that article where Ayano was responding to things is that, and Capcom has said this again and again. The most insulting thing is that there's no way to turn off gems, and that, every time someone mentions this, they say, well, we balance the game at gems, like.
It doesn't really feel that way.
Yeah. It's most certainly doesn't feel that way. And I mean, it's Capcom. They're going to say what they have to say, even if
to make the game seem like it's a good game worth purchasing. I mean, it's a video game company.
Right. They have to defend it.
Money.
So I understand, but yeah, it's really a cop out that there's no way to disable this thing. Like, there's not a simple on-off option. Like, you have to actually go to the menu and waste like 7 minutes of your life taking the gems off every character and saving it on your memory card.
I remember early on with the transition or the when Street Fighter Cross Tekken was getting all the new mechanics introduced and stuff like that. It was kind of the point where I was thinking, wow, is there a way that they're going to be able to like manage all these crazy gameplay mechanics with things like gems? They were saying like there's going to be hundreds of gems, and I'm like, hundreds? They're like, yes, hundreds. I'm like, what?
Sunday.
Like hundreds, hundreds. It's are you serious? Like hundreds? Like you're not just saying like hundreds of combinations? No, hundreds. And it was true. Like there was that many gems in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and to say that. I don't care what you have. If you have a character roster of over 30 characters and you have a selection of things that heavily adjust how those characters act and perform, and then you multiply that by hundreds, there's no way you can balance that. It's impossible.
There's another thing that I think a lot of Capcom players and Street Fighter players don't realize about Street Fighter Cross Tekken that I think most Tekken players do realize. And the problem that game has with the timer, a lot of people are like, oh, this is a problem with this game specifically, and that's why I hate the game, because of the timer. But honestly, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many Tekken players, the problem is not this game specifically when it comes to the time. It's actually the format of having to keep both characters alive. And Tekken players have been dealing with that exact format since like 98 when Tekken Tag came out, Tekken Tag 1. In that game, that game was plagued with timer problems, time up every time. And now that Tekken Tag 2 came out, and I haven't played the newest version of it, but the version that we got as a location test, that game also had major time issues. Yeah. And I just think it's the format. So
is it Tekken Tag 2 Unlimited?
No, Unlimited, I haven't played it. I haven't played Unlimited myself.
But the health got nerfed. But that's not a point. Actually, me and Jimmy actually just talked about this because, I've been learning the game and he's somebody who's teaching me how to play it.
Right.
And, but what's funny is the first thing that happened, I had a timeout victory versus somebody who plays, right? And afterwards, after I lost, I'm up there just talking about what I did wrong. And I was like, yeah, but, I play Alyssa, so I'm going to be doing that lame stuff. But like, I look to him and I'm like, Jimmy, I don't actually. It's weird in this game when I get a timeout, I almost feel proud. Like I don't feel like it is in Cross Tekken where you're like, and the other guy's like, you motherfucker. It's like in Cross or in Tekken, you actually feel like defense won and it was something to be proud of. Yeah. In this game, it just feels like you just snaked a guy, like you
in Tekken, it's like the space in between characters in Tekken, like you're not going to get at full screen distance away from each other a lot of the time.
Well, that's what I mean.
So like,
exactly. So
if it has to do with defense, definitely.
Right,
defense is very hard in Tekken. So if you
have that, it's admirable.
If you can defend for whatever amount of time is each round is, then you're a champ, and you earned it.
There was issues because like games shouldn't naturally go to timeouts, but wouldn't you agree, Aris, that like Tekken players felt like getting timeouts, it was kind of a badge of of honor in some sense because you're like, I did, I lamed it out, like I did it.
Yeah, but the key factor is that in Tekken it feels that way because defense is so it's so complex. In Cross Tekken, it's like it's really not like a huge achievement as far as you're trolling. I mean, you're just you're taking the easy way out if you're winning by time in Cross Tekken, in my opinion.
I agree. But that's why I'm saying, like, it's not so much like the timer is an issue. It's just like, Cross Tekken, the way the game works is the issue.
Yeah, the whole thing is muddy, I think. It's hard to pinpoint what the problem is, but it's a huge problem.
Yeah, I actually think what you guys are saying about defense and that stuff makes total sense. Now, the more I think about it, of why timeouts are a problem and why they're boring in Street Fighter Cross Tekken specifically. Yeah. Let me know what you guys think on behalf of myself and everybody or speaking here for the Fray. Use hashtag YoFray and let us know what you think can be fixed for Street Fighter Cross Tekken if there is a specific thing, or check out I Play Winner with a multitude of Street Fighter Cross Tekken articles and leave a comment there.
YoFray.
Yo,
you gotta
Fray.
Say there you go.
Is that really? Is it Yo Fray?
You gotta go Yo Fray.
Yo Fray.
Like Yo Fray.
Yeah, like that's so true.
I don't know anything about this, and I don't want to associate with it. Go on.
I had a conversation a little while ago about the things that can be fixed about Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Like, if you were to integrate like one thing that can potentially do it, and my suggestion was a snapback gem. Like a snapback gem that allows you to snap back one character, but it costs like all your meter.
Why is it gotta be a gem though, man?
Yeah, why can't it be a mechanic?
But at the same time, it's like if you put snapback in, you're adding another system mechanic on top of like the 700 system mechanics. Like exaggeration.
Aris, they've already gotten to him, man. He's done.
I know.
You're done, Max.
It's over.
You're thinking in gems. Get out.
He's gonna be a weeboo in no time, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
You're done.
Well, that's true. Like
it's a good idea, Max. I think that's what a lot of people were saying is like snap them in so I could just kill them and get the match over with.
Yeah, something.
And
something
go play
that
a good
the other
game.
character in. The other one was to change the game where, like, make it more as a CVS2 style, where you have two characters on each team, and you kind of make it to the point where when no, it wasn't CVS2 style. It was more of like Marvel style, where you still have control of both characters at the same time, but you take away the rounds. You take away like 2 out of 3 rounds, to get a victory, and instead you just have it like one round, and whoever dies at the end of that round, that's it. Just cut it off right there. That kind of would change a lot of the mentality, but it could also make it ridiculously lame at the same time.
Yeah, it's like superficial. It's like you're just, okay, sure, but it's still the same game.
Yeah, it still ends up being a similar game with just less playtime. I don't know. It's really hard to say what they're going to try to do to fix it. I'm kind of happy that they're trying to fix it because I see a potential for the game to be cool, but good God, man, it's tough sometimes. Max,
like the list of stuff you were saying, like that's all stuff. When I read it, I'm like, this is all right. Like they're thinking the right things. Like this is good. Like that. Like the timer, the jabs, the gems. Like they are addressing everything I think is wrong with the game. Like straight up. But what they do with that is the big question mark.
Yeah. I think so too. I don't know. It's interesting to say what Street Fighter Cross Tekken's lifetime is going to be and how long it's going to remain in the competitive scene. But as far as Evo this year and the fact of the 2v2 situation, which is still kind of like rummaging in the hearts of Street Fighter Cross Tekken players, what do you guys think of that? Do you think that was the only thing that Street Fighter Cross Tekken really needed to stay in the competitive light is like 2v2? What do you think, Fubar?
I feel like 2v2 was a format they could implement to make the game look less bad. And, personally, as much as it pains me to say it, like I would have at least had an interest in playing the game competitively if it was going to be 1v1 at Evo, because, I would have taken the game for what it is and learned how to play lame and, try to play really well and place high. But in 2v2, there's just too many factors. There's no way to coordinate, especially when you consider how many audio cues there are in the game.
Yeah, man.
For like tags and stuff like that, and how hard it is to hear in a setting like Evo. So
I agree 100% with that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 2v2 was just a way for Evo to say like, we want to support Capcom and have the game in the lineup, but you don't have to take it seriously.
It's a gimmick. It's the Wiimote.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
Well, I'd say
it's Mario Kart. Mario Kart at Evo.
Yep. Yeah. That's what it is, man. Smash Brothers or something,
That's rough. Like saying that it's like the Mario Kart of Evo because we had that in 07 or 08.
Right.
which was hilarious.
Yeah, that's a mean thing to say because Mario Kart's pretty godlike. So.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I'm insulting Mario Kart a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. Dude, banana peels? No joke.
I think a lot of tournaments are trying to give the game a chance. I think even with recent additions at Wednesday Night Fights at the end of their latest season, they were saying, I think Alex was recently saying how he's going to change things for Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and they're going to go into a gem selection, but they're going to ban certain gems, and they're going to allow, and they're going to make it 1v1, no more 2v2.
Oh my god!
I think
so-
it's everyone's in panic mode now, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh God, what do we do now? Let's just try this crazy idea. You can only play with 3 buttons." You know, it's like, come on, what gimmick are you going to throw at the game next? It's not that big of a deal. We've had bad games before.
Yep.
What's funny is that, yeah, and like I actually made the analogy of like Fighting Jam, and things like that. Or I was first
chaos.
making the analogy that early on Street Fighter Cross Tekken was reminding me of Third Strike, where it has a really devoted player base, but it's small. And at the same time, there's a lot of other people that don't like Third Strike because it was like technical and complicated. But then Street Fighter Cross Tekken evolved, and it became a not very technical and complicated,
Yeah.
and it became just a really weird type of game because of all of the system mechanics.
Yeah.
So now I'm like more comparing it to kind of like Fighting Jam. Like Fighting Jam was a game that was kind of like thrown together with a mishmash of a whole bunch of different Capcom fighters, and it just didn't work. Like nobody got into it, and it's really hard to say like why either. Like I didn't play too much Fighting Jam just because I kept playing CVS 2.
Yeah,
Like,
Fighting Jam was actually it was at SVGL, and I actually played it a lot, and it was cool, but there was just a lot of wonky stuff with that game, and it was just pardon my French, it was a jumble fuck. So it was like, really, we're just playing like CVS 2 or Darkstalkers Light with crappier versions of my characters. Like why am I even gonna bother?
And the same damn Morrigan sprite again.
Oh yeah, dude! Like she made a comeback again. So it was just like, it was one of those things where when you play Cross Tekken, like even if you like Tekken, like if you're a huge Tekken fan and you're like, oh yeah, dude, Lily's in it again, and you play her and you're like, wow, she's garbage. Like she does not play like this at all.
Yeah.
Or if you're, a Zangief fan and you're like, dude, I don't even get to use my 360 anymore now. It's like now I'm just using standing medium punch. She's like, everybody's like a gimped version of what they come from.
Yeah. I definitely see the variation with these games. So this will be like the first time in the newer age of the fighting game community, the post Street Fighter 4, where we see a game that is Capcom produced not doing very well, and I'm wondering what it's going to be like in the long run. Like, for example, from your guys' perspective, do you think with the addition of things like the DLC that everyone knows is coming and is planned, and probably more DLC after that, and balance patches that are going to come out and change the game to a point of which that it might be playable or it might still be the same game? Let's take some bets right now. Let's take some superficial bison dollar bets. Fubarduck, do you think Street Fighter Cross Tekken will be at Evo next year?
Do I think it'll be at Evo? That's a trick question.
Next year.
Do I think people will still be playing the game? If it's at Evo and it's 1v1, yeah, people will be playing the game.
Okay.
If it's not at Evo, nobody will be playing it. And to be honest, like I kind of wish rather than like invest so many resources in trying to fix, a lemon, I feel like they should just take their 1.4 million, take the DLC sales, of the DLC they already finished, and just move on to working on, whatever next secret project is coming
And then
out.
go make Street Fighter 5.
I think we
agree
have a winner.
100%.
Yep. We have a winner.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just such a waste of resources to invest more time in this game right now.
Yeah.
When there's so many, when there's so many things that everyone wants to see, like Darkstalkers and maybe Street Fighter 5 one day. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, they're just going to have to realize, it's time for a trade-in. Cash for clunkers. They messed up, and just go for a new game, I think.
I'm on the same page, man. Like, look, I'm a huge fan of all these DLC characters, too, which is a shame, because I'd love to tinker with them. But let's move on with life, There's bigger and better things.
It happens to all of us, man. We make mistakes.
Happens to the best of us, man.
Yeah.
So that's actually interesting leading forward to the future of Capcom fighting games. For the most part, we know what's big and coming from the other like fighting game giants like Namco and stuff like that. Like there's the Persona game that's coming out. Sega is coming out with Virtua Fighter 5 to the consoles again pretty soon, which is actually, you know, exciting as hell for me. Like, dude, if there's a fighting game that represents true honest fighting, I think Virtua Fighter 5 is kind of like that game in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to it, but there's stuff that we haven't really heard of yet, and Capcom didn't announce anything from, I think it was their recent press conference earlier this year, and now we got E3 coming up.
Right, Captivate.
Yeah, Captivate, you're right. Now we got E3 coming up in a couple of weeks now, and I'm fairly certain there's a new console being launched at the end of the year. There's no history of fighting games happening pretty soon, and there's a potential that I think the producer at Capcom who was talking about Street Fighter Cross Tekken was saying something along the lines of that they're very interested in Darkstalkers. So who knows, man? I'm pretty sure Darkstalkers might be making a return pretty soon.
I think
would you guys be happy with Darkstalkers making a comeback?
Depends on what engine.
Right. You know, I would be ecstatic, but it's going to be really hard to make the animations as original as they are in the sprites. Because sprites give you a lot of freedom in making the characters do wacky things.
Like all the crazy stuff.
Really hard. That's going to be so hard to make look good in a 3D-based engine.
Like
Much harder than
Raptor
making Street Fighter
disaboweling himself with his bones coming out of him and stuff like that. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Like it's going to be hard to make it look cartoony, which is how it's supposed to look.
Right, yeah. That's the whole thing about Darkstalkers. It was the ridiculously animated and fun version of Street Fighter, but it was monsters. So I think it could work. I think it'll most likely happen. I really want to know what it's going to be running off of if it is taking off an engine that exists.
Well, I think right now it'll bomb. If they put it out, it'll be ass. It'll be rushed. The characters will look stupid like they do in Street Fighter 4 and Cross Tekken, and like if they do it now. If they take some time after they messed up Cross Tekken, think about what they did wrong, sit in a corner for a little bit, and you know what they. You know what they need to do? And they need to sit back and look at what Namco's doing. And they need to look at what Harada's doing. Because,
well, I wouldn't go so quick to suck Namco's dick, man.
I'm saying, but the way they're conducting business is way better. He is like, screw DLC. I don't care about that. Everything on the disc is going to be free. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And their game's like, you know what, dude? Like, it's balanced. Like, it's a lot more smooth. The animations look sick. Like, everything looks cool. It doesn't look like herky-jerky, like it's stupid.
But think about this. See, like, you haven't been playing Tekken for a while. And the interesting thing to me is that statement that he made is kind of like, it's kind of not cool because when Tekken 6 originally came out on console, it desperately needed a practice mode patch. And I literally begged that guy, like, dude, put it in the game. And he's like, we don't believe in DLC. So it's that very motto that you are praising that pretty much, in my opinion, cost Tekken 6 like an endless, infinite amount of people who could have gotten good at it but weren't able to because practice mode sucks. So
right. Well, I mean, I'm in the practice mode right now, and it's pretty garbage. But like, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
Right, there's little things, that you don't think about. I mean, it's a smart decision at this point. Say that because like the whole Better Business Bureau thing and Capcom and all this, negativity.
It's political. I think it's a good political move.
Before we go any further, guys, I think that this is absolutely something we need to remember for the next one because it's the perspective of the design of fighting games from the other giant, which is Namco, like as far as when it comes to big fighters that are known and loved like the Tekken series in comparison to how Capcom does fighting games, which is interesting that they're working together. So we're going to save that for the next episode because we've got to wrap this one up right now. Magus or Andri, where can people follow and find you at?
They can find me wherever, man. I'm good. You know where I'm at.
Everywhere. Aris, what can people follow and find you at?
I run a website called avoidingthepuddle.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at avoidthepuddle. Cool.
Fubarduck?
And I am Twitter at Fubarduck, and of course, if you're in Texas or going to be in the area, follow at ArcadeUFO as well.
Yeah, if you guys are anywhere around there, visit your local arcade scene. Aris, do you still work at Super Arcade as well?
I do. I just got home from there.
visit Super Arcade, visit Arcade UFO, give the support to the scene, give support to Southtown Arcade. These guys are still doing the stuff that a lot of places tried to do over the years, and they're keeping at it. Of course, follow at iPlayWinner and visit iPlayWinner.com for the latest updates for the Fray. And we'll be continuing things pretty soon. If you want to follow me, you can follow me at Maximilian _ on Twitter, or search my name Maximilian on YouTube, and you should quickly find my videos. But yeah, until next time, thank you guys very much for coming. Had some pretty interesting conversations. And until next time, thank you guys very much for listening as well. We'll see you next time on The Fray.